pal is MALKI, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants. And today I'm going to show you the finished product before we go through all the steps to get there. To my left here is the Fuerte avocado tree. To my right, a 3-in-1 apple tree, and then just behind you a 5-in-1 fig tree. And here we are now at the end of July, and I'm going to talk about the importance of summer pruning for your fruit trees. These principles apply to even your ornamentals as well, and roses, is to remove the undesirable growth that has so far happened this year, with the intentions of taking advantage of that high metabolism of the plant to get the growth in the direction and in the locations that you want it. What we've now done is we've created this entire open canopy. If you come a little closer, for the first time ever, we've got light at all levels of this tree, whether you're 1 or 2 feet off the ground to the highest points of the tree. And what I also want you to note is that the underlying tree trunk is getting light as well for the first time in many months. And if it was not coated with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1, there's a risk of potential burn. And you'll see in this video an orange tree that we visited in Hollywood a few months ago that was suffering from 3rd-degree sunburns as a result of too much light getting into the tree trunk zone. So we've coated that, and we've also sprayed the leaves, but you can now see that we've got a beautiful structure, and I'm going to teach you how we can get there together. I hope you enjoy this video. And today we're going to be focusing on training and managing and controlling the shape of this Fuerte avocado tree that I've got behind me. A lot of these principles apply to fruit trees. Here we are now in the middle of July, and a lot of you have been asking, can I prune my fruits? And I'm like, only if you do so with caution, as you got to be very careful. I'm going to discuss some of those points in just a minute. This Fuerte avocado tree behind me is about 2 to 2.5 years old, and in front of me here is a Hass avocado tree that I just installed. And so as you can see with this tree, upon installation, is only about 3 feet tall, and you can see immediately the first thing we did is whitewash the tree trunk to make sure you can see how much light is going against it, and we're trying to prevent a phenomenon known as sunburn. And to accomplish this, we use this product over here, which is Ivory Organic. It's a 3-in-1 plant guard protection against damaging sunburn insects and rodents, and the protection for insects and rodents comes from these 7 natural oils: castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. And it's also registered material for use in organic agriculture. So instead of using paint, we used Ivory Organics to accomplish this whitewash phenomenon. And then what we also did, if you take a look closely at the leaf, is we used the Ivory Organics ready to use spray. Then you can just shake that and then spray it upon the leaves, and then just spray it upon the leaves like so. And now we've got an organic sunblock to help keep the plant several degrees cooler as the roots get established and the plant gets off to a good start. And as you can see, there's a lot of new growth happening on all of the tips. However, 2.5 years from now, we're going to end up with a tree like this. And I've been waiting for months, and I would have done a lot more to manage the tree, but I really wanted to demonstrate what would happen if you left it to grow naturally and on its own. Many of you also ask, how would this tree perform if it were in nature? What would happen? And we're going to take a look. But to maximize fruit yields and to maximize the structure and to maximize the aesthetics and the beauty of the tree, we're going to have to do some pruning to control that. And let me just quickly discuss some of the shapes that we can do to accomplish this. One of the first considerations we got to take into consideration is the movement of the sun across the sky. The sun rises in the east, which is behind you, and sets in the west. And fortunately, we've got this linear, formation in our garden that maximizes on the use of light as it traverses across the backyard from this corner to that corner. So all of these plants are south facing and getting the most amount of light on this side, whereas the back side of the tree is on the north side. And this is applicable in the northern hemisphere, is for all trees in the northern hemisphere. And here we are in Los Angeles, California, where most of the light is shining bright on the south end of the plant, with the hottest parts being the southwest part of the plant. So we got to keep that in consideration so we don't result in burning the under canopy, the lower branches, lower tree trunks of the plant. We'll discuss that a little further down the line. And now let's talk about tree shape. Your choices when it comes to a tree shape is going to be one of 3 designs. When I was looking at this plant for a while, one of our choices can be to create a tree such as this. this here being the tree canopy, and then the tree trunk, like so. And then the goal would be with all of the side branches that exist is to simply prune them off and to create a structure where all of the fruit and all the leaves will be several feet off the ground. A second approach would be to do something more like a Christmas tree or a teepee. And what this would do is, again, allow all of the sides to maximize on light by not allowing the top part of the tree to shade the lower branches and affect the ability for those branches to photosynthesize and make those sugars necessary to support a lot of fruit at the lower part of the tree. And another approach could be doing a square or a rectangle shape. And I have a perfect example for you if you follow me to the other side of the Fuerte avocado. Check this out. So now here we are now on the other side of the Fuerte avocado tree, and aside from the grapefruit variety, we've got the Oro Blanco grapefruit variety over here. We've got over here our Bear's lime tree, and the reason we put the Bear's lime in the garden is to have the limes to benefit making guacamole and other things that go well with avocados. We've planted it about 8 to 10 feet away, which is pretty close, but again, with consistent pruning methods, we're gonna create standard trees all within, you know, each of them having approximately 10 feet of space between them. They'll be able to go more wide, but they're gonna be managed to about 10 feet between trees. When it comes to the structure of the plant, as we discussed, the choices was to either grow it as a tree or as a teepee or as a rectangle. And over here what we've done is we've formed it into a rectangle. I've created a wall. It's benefiting from all the light with the sunrise from the east setting in the west, and this entire side gets the most amount of light throughout the day. The back side less so, being the north side when you're in the northern hemisphere. But what I've done is I've made sure that all of the branches get plenty of light. All of the branches are fan-like, and if you take a look, if you want to come in a little closer, I want to point out to you now what we've done. If you take a look at the structure of the tree, this here is the lower tree trunk. We've had it coated with the Ivory Organics color brown. That's why it's less noticeable. We'll talk more about the colors when we see the apple tree, but this was last coated about a year ago and has since created a wonderful canopy to the lower tree trunk. And you can see we're allowing some of these branches to protect the lower trunk. And then we've got all of these branches that are serving as a scaffold, and you can see within it all of these fruit that are within the tree. So we've got fruit here, we've got fruit way under here as well. And I would say this is now also a 2.5 year old Bear's lime tree, and we're supporting at least 2 to 3 dozen fruit in the second year, with hopefully approaching the hundreds by next year. And this tree has now reached heights of at least, my reach is about 8 feet, so we're at 9 to 10 feet right now on this tree. And we've created a nice pathway for us to, you know, and we've created this pathway to access all of the trees in between. And so we're keeping them nice and narrow, box shaped, plenty of light reaching those leaves. If you take a look, they're all getting nice amounts of light. And I've been managing this for quite some while. You can actually see there's a bamboo stake over here that's pulling this branch to a position that's away from these other branches. And then there's another stake over here, and this branch is being supported by that. And if we go up a little higher, you may notice that this branch is in the right place, again, because of another stake that's coming off of my vertical garden supporting my tomatoes, and I'm now managing this branch. So all of these branches are being controlled as, again, this is a young tree. We're wanting to make sure that we've created an open canopy with maximum amounts of light to maximize the amount of fruit. As you can see, we're doing quite well. Take a look at some other fruit real quick as we go up the tree. You can see about another 5 more fruit right there, about 2 to 3 more right in this zone, and it goes all the way up. So here we are now in the canopy of the Fuerte avocado tree. Again, I've been wanting to prune this for months, and yes, summer pruning is a great idea as the plant's maximum growth rate is peaking now. We're here again in the month of July, and there's more growth happening now than there will be pretty much any other time of the year. So if we can select the branches we want and enhance the growth of those branches and remove the undesirable branches and the undesirable growth, we can accomplish exactly what we're looking for, which is a perfectly shaped tree with the most number of leaves in the right area, capturing the most amount of light, so that come spring, we'll have all of those areas full of flowers and ultimately fruit in a perfect position, as I've just showed you with the lime tree. This tree again has been neglected for many months, and let me show you what's now resulted as a result. Take a look at this. If we take a look at the underlying canopy now, we can see that all of these branches are struggling for light, and what they're doing is they're just growing and growing and growing, but they're growing down. They can't get to the light, so they're growing in this down fashion, whereas the trees, the branches up above, if you take a look real quick, you can see that we've got this excellent scaffolding happening. These branches are only about a year old, and take a look at how thick they are. They're at least an inch across, a little bit more so closer to the tree trunk, and then they're just going up, and they've got so much vigor. All of this growth has happened just in the last few months. So the tree's obviously off to a wonderful, wonderful start, but these upper branches are evolving into what will eventually become a tree with branches up high, and all of these lower branches will ultimately die, and that's not what we want. So to accomplish more vigor in these lower branches, we're going to have to remove some of the canopy and encourage light to enter the lower canopy to bring these branches out, as we just saw with the lime tree. And let's see how we're going to accomplish that. Let's get to the other side. So the first tip, and the first thing I'm going to do, is to first take a look at the branches. And the branches are pointed downwards, with the exception of the ones in the lower canopy, which I'm going to want to revive and bring back up. And I'm going to show you how in just a minute. But all of the branches that are pointing down, for example, if you take a look at this branch over here, it's coming off of the branch, and it's creating another branch going in the down direction. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prune it. And when I prune it, I don't just randomly cut it off like so, leaving this exposed to just dry out and die. What we're going to want to do is we're going to cut it as close as we can to the branch that it's come off of, if you take a look over here. And then what will happen is, as this branch continues to expand, it'll heal over this particular wound. And what we're also going to do towards the end is we're going to coat everything with the Ivory Organics with as many exposed surfaces as, again, this is now exposed wood, whereas the bark is protecting the tree and the underlying wood. And until it heals over, we're going to coat it with the Ivory Organics at the end of this video. What we're also going to look at, if you come in a little closer, we're going to continue that pattern throughout. Take a look at this branch over here. It's pointing straight down. We do like this branch structure, but we don't want the branches pointing down, as these branches will always be competing for light. So we are going to remove that branch out as well. And we're going to continue that process throughout. So here we are now in our vertical tomato garden, and as you can see, there's this avocado tree that's extending its way out and over all of these tomatoes that are underlying its canopy. Again, this avocado has been growing extremely vigorously this spring and summer, and I know the future, probably as early as next year, I'm not going to be able to capitalize on this many vegetables growing on this particular area of the garden. So it's going to ultimately become more of a fruit. So it's ultimately going to become more of a fruit forest rather than a vegetable garden. But you and I will get to experience the growth that's going to be happening here within the garden. But what I want to share with you here is, as the canopy is making its way and growing, again, now we're on the north side of the tree. So this is considered the shady side of the tree. So we're not going to be able to capitalize much on the light on this entire height of the avocado tree on this side. But there's another thing happening. So all of these branches that are now creating the canopy, which is going underneath this particular walkway, I like and I want, and I look forward to hopefully sharing with you by as early as next year, fruit that are going to be hanging right over my head, and I'm going to be able to harvest avocados right here. But there's something happening that I don't like, and is not desirable, is that there's another larger branch coming off of these branches that are going up and onto the roof. And what we're going to do here is we're going to prune it. But when it comes to pruning, again, it's not random. What we're going to do is we're going to trace the branch, and I'm hoping you in the video can capture this. And here I am going into these branches, but you can see that there's this branch over here that's going on top of the roof, and that's not an ideal situation. And what we're going to do is we're going to follow the branch down, and we're going to look for the nearest branch that we're wanting to keep. And from this point down, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 branches within a couple of feet, creating this canopy that I've got my head in. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to prune it like so. And now we've got this entire branch that's coming down. Take a look at it as it falls. When it comes to pruning as well, this is all growth that has been accomplished in just the last couple of months. All of this will be recycled back in the garden as it's got all of the nutrients that the avocados need, all of the fertilizer organically that we put into the soil to enrich the soil and feed the soil biology has now gone into this. We're going to want to return it right back to the plant. I'm going to show you how in just a minute. And notice that with all of the growth that, all the pruning that we're doing in the summer is limited to just the first and possibly second year growth only. For older branches, you're going to have to wait until later winter, until you get into the time of year when you're past the last chance of frost and before the spring bloom, before the spring budding, before the spring growth. That is an excellent window to do most of your pruning, as the chance of any more damaging frost harming the branches, you'll be pruning all of that out, with also controlling the shape and size and pruning those larger branches. So wait until later winter, after last chance to frost is past an area, before making more of your major pruning selection. So here we are back on the south side, the sunny side of the tree. And now there's this one branch over here, which I'm hoping you can capture, that's way taller than the rest of the plant. And again, to avoid this fuerte avocado tree or any other fruit tree from forcing itself into a tree shape prematurely. That might be the future of this tree, but for now and for the next few years, and I'm going to try my best to manage it, more of a 15, maybe 12-foot size tree with a lot of fruit at a very low level. If I allow this branch to take over, it's going to take the vigor out of the entire tree and push it to those highest shoots. But by bringing this down, it's going to create a more balanced tree where more of the branches from around the canopy will equally grow up, and I'll keep on managing the height so that the lower part of the plant can continue to grow and push those flowers and fruit during each year. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this branch back down to a more even height with the rest of the tree. And then we're going to continue pruning all of those branches that are pointing down. As you can see with this, the shape of it has been forced down due to that large branch. So we're going to now try to control them. What I'm going to do is, I see these leaves that are over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down to about 1/4 of an inch above the leaf node. If you can come in a little closer, I want to make sure you see this. Because again, I'm not just randomly cutting anywhere. It's right where that leaf node is. I'm going to want to encourage these two nodes to eventually turn into branches. So we're just going to cut at an angle about 1/3 of a distance away from that node. And you can see we've got what will eventually become a nice transition flow into those branches. And we're going to do the same thing here with this branch as well. And if you want to come in a little closer, you'll see here's the leaf node. And we're cutting it about 1/4 inch away. And then we've got that right there. And here's another observation worth noting, is that we've got these two branches that are parallel to one another, meaning they will always be competing on top of one another for light. So I'm now going to have to select between this branch and the lower branch, and being that I want to create, and so now that I've made that cut, I'm noticing that there's even a better place for me to prune the branch, being there's two more scaffold branches right in this zone, followed by a couple more branches. So I've got about 4 to 5 branches within 1 foot down here. I'm actually going to lower the branch another foot, like so. And you can see we've got this nice wimpy branch over here. That'll eventually become one of the strongest, more vigorous branches, as all of the energy is going to be directed into this and all of the smaller branches around it. The last thing I want to point out, and you can now see there's a lot more light coming now into the lower canopy. There's sun now going on these leaves that have not seen the sun in months. What we're going to do now, and another thing in regards to controlling the shape, and because I've waited so long to demonstrate this point, is we're now going to have to support some of these branches. If you take a look inside, as we discussed at the beginning, a lot of these branches are just growing down in their struggle to compete for light. What will eventually happen is these are going to continue staying very thin and weak, and will eventually die back as the energy goes to the upper canopy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to support these branches by taking some ties and supporting these lower branches to some of the more vigorous, stronger upper branches. I'm going to demonstrate that now. So here's a more obvious point I can make is if you take a look at this branch, it's a very nice, healthy looking branch, but again, its direction is down and it's been forced down again due to the insufficient light that these branches were getting prior. What we're going to do is we're just going to take our string and we're going to wrap it above one of these stronger upper branches and then support this lower, weaker branch, and we're going to try to direct it up so it has a better structure. And the goal is to get the branch either perpendicular to a little bit above the direction in which it came out of the tree trunk. So if you take a look over here, you can see within, these branches again are all pointing down, but now this branch is pointing across and up instead of across and down. This will create a much stronger branch, and if you take a look at the leaves, they're all confused now. Instead of pointing up towards the light like so, they're now pointing towards the house. But this will correct itself within the next day or two, and we're now going to just see if there's any other branches that need to be pruned out, such as this one over here that's pointing in the down direction, and we'll select this one out and recycle it now into these compost piles that are between the avocado trees. If you take a look here, this here is one of the branches that we removed. What we're going to do is we're just going to cut it down into these compost piles that exist between the trees. And what's happening here, in addition to the organic fertilizers that we're feeding these trees monthly during the growing season, we're talking about spring, summer, and fall, feeding your trees. We've also got these organic piles, and within it you can see that we've got now our avocado leaves, we've got some parts of our sunflower, and over here I remember we had some bananas that we didn't get to in time, and so even our rotten bananas are in here, and there's just a whole bunch of green waste in here. No meats, no fish, nothing to attract a lot of pests and predators to the garden. But this here, what it's going to do is going to break down, and the snails and the sawbugs and the slugs and all of the things that enjoy eating all of this green waste is going to break it down into manure that's ultimately going to return all of these elements to its, all of this green waste back into its elements and return those elements that will be benefiting the trees that are adjacent to these compost piles that are between each of the trees. So we've just supported this branch. Here's another branch I'm going to work on next. You can see that it's down on the ground. So you can imagine if this had avocados, the avocados are going to be on the ground, and again, the slugs and the snails and everything that are benefiting these compost piles are probably going to damage the fruit before I ever get a chance to enjoy it. So we're going to have to try to see if we can save this branch, or we're going to end up pruning it. I'm not going to work on the tree on my own for the next 10-20 minutes, and I'll bring you back to see the final result. So here we are now, about 99% of the way done. You can see that the entire plant is now in the light for the first time in many, many months. Before it was just the upper leaves and the upper canopy that was getting the light, shading out the lower, but now every single layer is getting plenty of light. And what I want to point out too is take a look at the lower base. There's sunshine right here at the lowest level of the tree trunk. And again, this is the first time, fortunately, it's covered with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1. But if you come up, there's still quite a bit of light even in these other areas that were completely shaded entirely for the last several months. As the canopy grew, it shaded all the lower structures and these lower branches. Take a look at these branches. I'm going to talk about the importance of this in just a second. But take a look at the scaffolding now, as it's called, of all the branches within. You can see that most of them are now pointing directly out or out and up. And we've done this all by supporting these strings. And there's, again, this is my preference. There could be, something more thick that would be less potentially harmful to the branches in accomplishing this goal. But as you can see, I've just simply used some nylon string to accomplish this. And then the stake that's here in between, I've already loosened, and I'm just going to remove that now, as there's no need for a supporting stake as we did with the initial planting. When you initially plant a tree, it's beneficial to have a stake to make sure that it's, it becomes established, and that a wind or rain or any of these events, or even a bird landing on the structure, doesn't end up damaging the form of the tree. So now that we've got a nice thick structure, which was accomplished again in just about 2 to 2.5 years. We've now used the upper structure to support these lower branches. So most of these strings are tied onto these upper branches. And I've left one more to share with you so you can see what I've done, as about half of these branches were removed to allow enough air circulation and flow and light throughout the entire structure. To keep every single one of these would have been too many. So you may notice that we've pruned this one out, we've pruned this one out, and then we pruned a couple on the back side, but this one here I've left so you can see how weak this branch was within the structure, just pointing downward. But this is another one that, had I preserved it and pulled it up, it would have been, again, too close to these underlying branches. So I've decided that this one will be coming out. And again, when we prune it as close as we can to the tree trunk, so as the trunk continues to expand, it'll eventually become protected underneath the bark and underlying cambium layers. So that's been accomplished. What I want to now point out to you is now the importance of protecting the plant with a Whitewash, the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard. And I want to share with you a tree that was pruned just about a year ago in North Hollywood. I've shared this video with you once or twice in the past, but I want you to see just a few more minutes of this real quick to talk about the importance of, when you do a summer pruning or even a spring pruning, that excess amount of light in what was once shaded can cause not just first-degree burns where, you know, the color of your skin, as you can see mine, is starting to turn red in the heat, but secondly, when you get blistering, that results in second-degree burn, and then when you start burning the underdermis of your skin, that's a third-degree burn. I want you to check out this third-degree plant burn on an orange tree in North Hollywood. Check this one out. And let me show you why. Take a look underneath what happened here. And right here was the branch that was pruned, and you can see how large it was. It was at least 20, possibly 30 years old. Right here, and this went up and out in the direction of the swimming pool, and that was probably the reason it was pruned. And then take a look at what happened underneath. Look at the bark, how it's peeling. All of this is dead skin. If this was your body, this would be your skin coming on, and it goes all the way down, all the way down, all of that damage. Take a look at those cracks. These are third-degree burns on a plant, and I don't know if anyone has ever described this as third-degree burns, but this is a third-degree plant burn. The epidermis, the dermis, and it's damaged all the way to where the wood is. So this is now a perfect entryway for termites and wood-boring beetles to get into the tree and start hollowing out the center of the plant. The other thing I want to point out here is the sun, and it'll be out here in about the next hour, is shining on this side of the plant. If you were to go around back, I don't know if you can work your way around with the camera, you'll notice that this entire back side of the plant is not damaged. And this is the side that's actually now bringing the sugars and the juices and all the life-giving support is coming from the backside, the shaded part of the plant. And what we're going to do here today is actually coat and protect this part of the plant, and actually for cosmetic, we'll actually even paint the backside as well so it all looks uniform. But we're going to cover this with a product called Ivory Organics. The dissolved. I want to show you one other orange tree that's to my left here. So here we are under another orange tree, and this here is a very successful orange tree, as indicated by it's got an amazing canopy. It's loaded with fruit and a lot of young fruit as well, and there's probably several hundred fruit up above my head. And what impresses me so much about this plant is you can actually see the tree trunk here is actually in excellent condition. And again, that's only because it's in the shade. You want to make sure you grow your trees where they are actually shading and protecting the branches in the tree trunk. And you'll notice over here on this branch that I'm touching that there's actually damage over here. And even though we're in the shade of the tree, there was a time, once upon a time, that there was, and you can see there's like a little bit of light here in this part right now, but there must have been a hole in the canopy that allowed too much light to hit this branch, and the branch actually cracked. So if you're in your garden, take a look at these signs, and before it gets this severe, this will actually take probably a decade to heal. So if you actually caught these issues, and if you take a look a little lower, I'll find another thing that's less severe. You'll actually see over here there's like some cracking in the bark. Over here it looks like there's a wound with some sap that's coming out of it, but this is a wound that later on we're actually going to open it up to remove all the dead wood. And you can see it's already starting to callus right around there. And so rather than keeping this dead wood, which would be again food for the termites and the beetles and wood destroying organisms that might start here and then work their way into this wood and then work their way into the heart of the tree, we're going to remove that, and then we're just going to brush some Ivory Organics over this wound as well, so that we basically repel any insects from getting into the heart of the tree. So summer pruning is also important to help balance the strengths between your trees. This here is a 3-in-1 grafted apple tree. It was coated. If you can come in a little closer, you may see this is the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 color green, white, and then brown. I'm hoping you can see all of that here. So we've got the 3 colors just for demonstration purposes. And what I've got here is the apple tree to my right is of the red variety. The one in the middle is a greenish red variety, and this one over here is a green variety. But if you take a look at the structure over here, this has grown quite well. And what we did actually about a year ago, what we first did is we pulled the entire structure apart. Had we left these suckers alone, as you can see in the middle, these are 3 suckers that eventually created the 3 different flavors of the tree. And what we did is we pulled each of these branches apart into a base shape to then maximize on the amount of light. And right now, we're in the couple of hours of what is, shade in this part of the garden. But we opened it up to create a base shape so all of the leaves have an equal opportunity to light. But what I want to point out is last year we enjoyed 1 apple off this greenish red variety. This one still has not fruited, but we do expect it to fruit by next year. But this variety over here, my Granny Smith apple, if you want to come around real quick, I want to share with you, if you come around this way, you can take a look at the difference on what's happened here in the structure. You can see over here we've got a couple of Granny Smith apples, another one over here, and what has resulted in this branch over here was growing too close to the wall, so we've since pruned it. It's creating a couple more branches, young branches over here, but these branches are far inferior to these branches to my right, as well as this other variety which is also to my right. And the reason is this is not fruiting, this one's not fruiting, and because this one has held on to a few fruit, I've clearly seen the difference on the vigor of this variety of apple compared to the other one. So I've decided to take the fruit off 1 more year. That we're now going into about 2.5 years as well with this tree. So by year 3, I feel more confident that we'll get a better supporting apple tree than if we allow these fruit to continue sucking the vigor out of this particular branch. So what we're going to do is we're just going to remove the apples, and fortunately for me, I love tart fruit, so these are not even going to be wasted. I can pick them even though these won't ripen. Here we are in July. These won't ripen until October, November. But we're still going to enjoy these apples, and they're still quite delicious. So over here to my right is my 5-in-1 fig tree. And also when it comes to summer pruning, it's important to also, again, as we talked about with the apple tree, is balancing the strength. What I have over here is a grafted variety of the Chicago Hardy fig, which is a black fig that was gifted by Richard in Pendleton, Oregon. And he shared these with me during the winter, and we rooted them in small pots, and then I grafted it onto this very vigorous rootstock of a fig variety, which now has 5 different varieties of figs, ranging from purple to black to green to the striped panache tiger fig, and then brown. So again, let me repeat that. We've got purple, brown, green, the stripe, and black. So we've got 5 very dramatically different looking figs that we'll hope to share. It looks like it's not going to happen by this summer, so by next summer, but we do have green figs on the Kadota, which I'll share with you in a minute. But what I want to share with you when it comes to structure, if you come over a couple feet this way, you can see that I've got over here 2 main primary branches. Off of this primary branch, I've got 3 varieties of figs, but off of this variety on this particular branch, I've got only 2 varieties of figs. And in the front here, I've got is the Chicago Hardy fig, and then behind it, I've got the Celestial Purple variety of fig. And what's happening is this is growing so vigorously strong as it took and grafted earlier, and it's doing very well, whereas the one in the back, I'm still waiting on more healing, which I'm going to share with you in just a minute. But what I'm going to do now is, and if you can come back now around this way, you'll see that this, and what we're doing is called an approach graft, where this is the Celestial Fig, which is a purple variety of fig. It's still in its container over here. We've approach grafted these 2 together and then wrapped it up in fishing twine. I then wrap it up in a paper towel and then seal that with a plastic bag to retain the moisture, and that helps with the grafting. And I've opened it to share that with you today. but what's happening is so much vigor is coming from the root down this branch and supporting the Chicago Hardy variety, potentially to the detriment of my second graft. And if I allow it, all of the energy will eventually support this one branch, again to the detriment of the branch in the back, and it's getting more shade and less sun to not offer all the vigor that it can otherwise benefit from. So to accomplish what I call the balance of powers between branches, what we're going to do is we're going to take this Chicago Hardy variety and bring it back down until this one heals over the next few more weeks. There's about another 2 weeks to go before I can separate this pot away. But what I'm going to do in regards to balancing the powers, we're going to bring this height down to about here. And so what I'm looking for, again, if you want to come in a little closer, I'm looking for the node. And the node is where the branch is going to continue to grow. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go with my pruners about 1/4 inch and cut at an angle. And the reason for cutting at an angle is so that moisture doesn't end up collecting on the top and rotting potentially the top of the wound. So what's going to happen is if it rains or there's any moisture that collects on the top, it's going to wash right off because you've cut it at an angle. So that's the reason for that. And then this bud will eventually create the new branching. And then all of these branches that are behind it that are competing with the light on this side, I'm going to remove. So I'm going to just cut those off like so. And the goal is this particular branch is going to be producing the Chicago Hardy figs in the front. I want the Celestial Purple variety to be growing in the back, and I don't want them to be competing for light. And again, even though this is a little taller, I'll continue pruning at select times over the next few months until we accomplish the goal. And now let me share with you where we're at in regards to the healing of this Celestial variety of fig. So here we are now. You can see this here is the wound. This here is the rootstock that's white, and it was painted white because we had originally a black mission fig that was grafted on top that failed, more likely than not because there was a bird that landed on it and it wasn't strong enough at the point. So since then we've supported each of the grafts with these stakes to make sure that nothing weakens the graft until it gets much stronger over the next year or two. But you can see that we've damaged what's going to be the scion wood, celestial wood over here. We've cut it in half and inserted over here, and I'm going to include the grafting video on how we accomplish this towards the end of this video. And then this goes down to the selected pot, and then this here is the rootstock, which is a green variety of fig that we're wanting to now convert from green to purple. So eventually what's going to happen is we're going to prune this off, and then we're going to prune it down below the scion wood at this point, and then the flow will be from rootstock to scion wood. And like I said, I'll include more videos towards the end of this talking about how that works. So here I am now on the other side of the 5-in-1 fig tree. If you want to come in a little closer, you can see this here is the my tiger fig. Even though it has no fruit, I want you to take a look at the bark, and you can see the variegated pattern in the bark, which is quite unique compared to all the other varieties where you can see the white, yellow, and green stripes throughout. And then over here, this is my Kadota Fig. This is the only one that's performing immediately, so maybe a consideration, you know, for you in regards to whether you do cuttings or graftings of this variety. You can see that it's very precocious, meaning it's very early bearing. You can see every single one of these leaves is just pushing out figs, and it's growing so vigorously tall. I'm standing about a foot above the rootstock, and you know, I would say we're at about 7 feet now with the plant. And it grew at least 4 to 5 feet from the graft point in just the last 3 months. So a lot of vigor happening here, and we've got it supported with stakes that are coming off of the trellis behind. We've got it staked down below as well. So we're doing all of these things to make sure that the graft union, which is right here where my finger is not damaged. And again, this was also protected with the 3-in-1 plant guard to protect it from sunburn, but more importantly from keeping insects out from entering that wounded area until all of those calluses are eventually formed, and the cambium tissue and the bark tissues eventually protect the area naturally. So if you want to come in a little closer, you can see that I'm now painting the tree with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard. The goal is again to protect all of these exposed areas that were once all in the shade that are now getting too much sun, and to prevent the risk of first, second, and obviously third-degree burns from happening. And even all of the pruned branches such as these are all going to be coated like so. And we're just going to continue this all the way around. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take the 3-in-1 Plant Guard ready to use spray protection against damaging sunburn insects and rodents. The goal again is to protect it from sunburn. All of these underside leaves were once in the shade. All of these lower branches were all in the shade, whether it was the top or the bottom part of the leaf. But what we're going to do is just protect all of these harder to coat branches, because we're just going to spray it like so. And if you want to zoom in, you can see what's happening here. Beautiful monarch butterfly. I want to reiterate the importance of returning those cuttings, all of the branches of those avocados that we've just pruned, and no matter what your summer fruit tree is that you're pruning, return them back to the ground, return them back into your compost piles, return them back into the earth. So all of those elements and all the fertilizer you put in your garden that you went into creating these branches are returned right back to you. And the best part is it's free, and your garden soil will love it and reward you with more earthworms, more beneficial insects to get your plants off to the best start, and also to support and sustain that natural, healthy plant growth from year after year. If you've enjoyed this educational video by Arborist Organics, be sure to like it, and most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to all these videos as they become released. And I'm also going to put some of my favorite video links down below in the comments, as well as at the end of this video. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.